Throughout the pages of official records, we frequently encounter stories of grandeur, honor, and the heroism of national leaders. But lurking beneath these polished narratives are incidents far less flattering. Scandals filled with cover-ups, betrayals, abuses of power, and moral lapses that shaped the fate of entire societies. Often buried by those who wish to preserve a shining image of the past, these misdeeds sometimes resurface decades or centuries later, casting a darker shadow on historical icons and eras. Yet, understanding these hidden scandals is vital for achieving a balanced view of how human affairs truly unfold, reminding us that history is rarely as neat as its official chronicles suggest. One particularly infamous incident that captures both the complexity and the high stakes of national scandal is the Dreyfus Affair in late 19th century France. In 1894, Captain Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish officer in the French army, was arrested and charged with passing military secrets to Germany. The evidence against him was flimsy and, in many respects, fabricated. But the prevailing social climate, tinged with widespread anti-Semitism, allowed the charges to stick. Dreyfus was found guilty and sent to the remote Devil's Island penal colony, a symbol of France's willingness to scapegoat a marginalized individual to safeguard national pride. Over the next decade, writers, politicians, and intellectuals took starkly opposing sides. When Émile Zola published his open letter titled J'accuse in 1898, he aimed to expose the corruption and malfeasance within France's military and judicial institutions. The scandal polarized the nation. On one side were those insisting that national honor required unwavering trust in the army's judgment. On the other, defenders of justice who argued that Dreyfus was a victim of institutional bias and that truth must override blind patriotism. Ultimately, Dreyfus was exonerated, but not before the scandal tore at the fabric of French society, sowing distrust and forcing the country to confront its own prejudices. Such controversies aren't confined to a single country or era. In Renaissance Italy, accusations of corruption surrounded powerful families like the Borgias, who allegedly used bribery, poison, and intimidation to secure positions in the church and government. Rumors of incest, murder plots, and lavish misuse of church funds circulated widely, turning the Borgias into bywords for debauchery and corruption. While historians debate the extent of the exaggerations, enough documentation survives, papal bulls, letters, and eyewitness accounts, to indicate that nepotism and graft permeated the highest echelons of power. Though these scandals shaped policies, alliances, and even religious reforms, official narratives often sought to sanitize the era for posterity. Moving to 20th century America, one can't help but recall the Teapot Dome scandal, which erupted during the Harding administration. High-ranking officials leased Navy petroleum reserves at Teapot Dome, Wyoming, to private oil companies without competitive bidding, in exchange for personal bribes. News of this arrangement broke in the early 1920s and triggered a media firestorm. Investigations and Senate hearings exposed a staggering abuse of power that undermined public trust in government. The Secretary of the Interior, Albert B. Fall, was convicted of accepting bribes, making him the first sitting cabinet member in U.S. history to go to prison. The debacle severely tarnished the Harding administration's reputation and highlighted the vulnerability of public institutions to unscrupulous personal gain. One might ask, why do these scandals fade from collective memory, sometimes barely mentioned in school textbooks or national celebrations? In many cases, powerful entities work diligently to erase or minimize their impact. Documents might be classified, victims silenced through threats or bribes, and newspapers encouraged or forced to drop coverage. Over time, the next generation deals with a sanitized historical account that accentuates triumphs while glossing over the moral failures. Some historians argue that acknowledging a scandal is tantamount to undermining national pride, or that rehashing controversies only reopens old wounds. Yet burying the truth robs society of critical lessons about accountability, institutional checks, and the dark temptations of power. Scandals also frequently intersect with issues of identity, class, and social prejudice. For instance, the Dreyfus Affair was partly fueled by anti-Semitism, which made Dreyfus a convenient suspect in the eyes of many French officials. Similar dynamics appear in cases around the world, where ethnic or religious minorities are scapegoated to deflect blame from more systemic problems. Such scapegoating can rally nationalistic fervor but tears apart social cohesion, feeding resentment and division. The ensuing controversies often reveal not just individual wrongdoing, but also deeply ingrained biases. What is gained by unearthing these forgotten controversies? Knowledge primarily. By facing the moral failures of the past, societies can develop stronger ethical frameworks and legal safeguards. Scandals illustrate how unchecked power, absent transparency, leads to systematic abuse. They also show how courageous whistleblowers, journalists, or citizens' groups can force a reckoning. Take the Watergate scandal as an example. In the early 1970s, a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters spiraled into an exposé of President Nixon's involvement in illegal surveillance and political espionage. Investigative reporters from the Washington Post and persistent congressional committees tore down layers of deception, culminating in Nixon's resignation. Though Watergate is well known, lesser parallel cases often sit in dusty archives, each with vital insights about institutional fragility and the nature of conspiracy. Of course, not all controversies get resolved so decisively. Some remain open-ended, with documents sealed for decades. In certain regimes, official records vanish or are destroyed, leaving only rumor and circumstantial evidence. Historians and researchers spend years, even entire careers, piecing together partial data. When the truth eventually emerges, sometimes long after the main actors are gone, it can reshape national self-understanding. If anything, the frequent mismatch between official propaganda and authentic historical evidence reveals how fragile narratives can be. People realize the official story is always subject to revision when facts leak out. For general audiences, these overlooked scandals can be enthralling. Unveiling hidden correspondence or old trial transcripts often reveals the raw drama of power struggles, backroom deals, secret alliances, betrayals, hush money. Entire novels or films revolve around real events that once lay buried. The public's appetite for revelation suggests an enduring fascination with how the mighty stumble when their dark secrets come to light. Perhaps there is also a sense of vindication for those who suspect that leaders are rarely as noble as official accounts would have us believe. Ultimately, delving into forgotten scandals is more than a tabloid pursuit of salacious details. It is a testament to the multifaceted nature of history, which includes great achievements alongside moral and ethical failings. By remembering the Dreyfus Affair, the Teapot Dome scandal, the corruption of the Renaissance papacy, or lesser-known fiascos hidden in local archives, we cultivate a healthier skepticism about power. We learn that institutions must be accountable, that the press plays a critical role in exposing misdeeds, and that justice often depends on brave individuals willing to challenge a corrupt status quo. Through these lessons, societies can strive toward more honesty and responsibility, ensuring that the darkest pages of history do not repeat themselves in cycles of ignorance and impunity.